everyone. Welcome to the Salesforce Admins webinar, Master the New Lightning Report Builder. Yay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for taking time out of your day. My name is Mark Baseman, and I'm an admin evangelist here at Salesforce, and I'm here with Liz Skate, Senior Product Manager. Say hi, Liz.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. So, of course, it wouldn't be a Salesforce Admins webinar without our forward-looking statement. We will be making some forward-looking statements today, so be aware you should make your buying decisions only on products and services that are currently available. And of course, we are on all of the social media, so please connect with us. We are on Twitter at Salesforce Admins with no I. You can connect with other awesome admins with the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Salesforce Admin. And of course, our terrific website, admin.salesforce.com. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, so you can stop asking. Just kidding, you can keep asking. So it will be posted to YouTube and the webinar recap page at the bit.ly link below. What if you have questions during the webinar? Well, please ask them in the admin webinar group on the Trailblazer community. You can get to that at the bit.ly link here. Note the capital A, W, and G. That is in the Trailblazer community. You don't have to wait until the end to ask your question. We have team members that are going to be in the group collecting questions. We will have, hopefully, time for live Q&A at the end, and we'll get some more questions at the end. And then if we don't get to them in the webinar itself, we will go back in the community and do our best to answer them there. Let's get into the good stuff today. There's so many of you. This is a super popular webinar. So we're going to talk about understanding the new Lightning Report Builder. We're going to talk about building reports and dashboards. We're going to do the ever popular live demo. I'm going to give you some resources to follow up on, and then we'll do that live question and answer at the end. Note that today we will just be starting your mastering journey. There is so much stuff to learn. So just be aware we can't cover everything in these 30 minutes, but we're going to do our best. So with that, Liz, take it away. Tell us about the new Lightning Report Builder.
Thanks, Mark. Well, now that the Lightning Report Builder is generally available in Summer 18, all Lightning users can quickly and easily build their reports. So you'll notice some differences from Classic. We now support flexible changes to your report formats by adding or removing row and column groups. You can organize your folders, your reports into folders and subfolders. You can run your reports without saving now. And you can add your charts to dashboard components directly from the report.
That sounds awesome. So let's talk about building reports and dashboards. We thought the best way to do this was to give you all a scenario. So Liz and I work at Swagco, and I, against all popular decisions, have been made the VP of Sales at Swagco. Swagco produces custom plush toys and uses Salesforce to manage sales. So we're working together as I'm the VP of Sales. Liz is my trusty Salesforce administrator. So I have some key questions that I want answered, and Liz is going to help with getting the answers to these business questions. So question one, what are all the deals that we've closed this year? Question two, how much money did we close this year? Number three, who are my top salespeople this year? Number four, what percentage of our total business did each person close? And number five, how much did each person close each quarter this year? So you get the use case here. If this was a fundraising use case, it would be all the same questions. So now let's hear from Liz, our admin, to talk about the plan and how she's going to go about answering these business questions. Go for it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mark. So now Mark has entrusted me to find the answers to those 5 questions, and I'm going to be revisiting those questions. But first, I'm going to have a plan for how I'm going to build a report to answer his questions. So I recommend that we follow 4 major steps when we're building our reports. First, you want to make sure you're only looking at the relevant data. So you need to decide what report type is going to have the right records, choose what display columns to show in that report, and decide what filters need to be applied. And then step 2 would be, once you have all the right records in your report, you need to find the right format or organize those records into groups in order for you to do any additional calculations. And then step 3, you would actually do those calculations on the groups in your report. And then step 4, you would add charts to better visualize how those groups compare and understand the calculations on each group. So now that we have this plan, let's dive into what each of those steps entails for Mark's questions. So for finding the relevant data for the report, Mark has asked me 5 questions, and they all seem to have to do with the open deals. So he wants to know what those deals, closed deals. He wants to know what the deals were that were closed this year, how much they're worth, who closed them, and how those wins break down by team member and by quarter. So they all actually have to do with opportunities. Deals are also known as opportunities. So we're going to use the report type opportunities. And I think Mark is going to want to know who owns those deals, the names of the deals, how much those deals are worth, so the amount, and when the deals were closed. And so those are going to be the 4 display columns I want in my report. And I want to make sure that my report is filtered down to only the deals owned by people in Mark's team that were closed this fiscal year and which were closed with a status of 1, which means we are not interested in the deals that we lost or that are still active. All right. So now we've zeroed in on the relevant data. We can move on to step 2, which is deciding how we need to format the report for any additional calculations we need to answer his questions. So remember, he had 5 questions. The first 2 questions were, what are all the deals we closed this year, and how much did we close this year? Now, by default, when I pull this report of all those deals won this year, apply all those filters, I can just get a list of those deals. And if we just make sure that all the amounts are added up for all the deals in that report, we can answer those 2 questions right off the bat. We don't need to do any additional changing of the way the report is displayed because we already know the total amount, and that answers question number 2, and we have a list of all those deals. We could stop right there, but Mark had more than 2 questions. He had 3 more questions. So
way more than 2
we're going to have to look
I'm a sales VP. I always have questions.
Yes. He always has another question for me to find out. So we can't stop there. Just having that list of deals is not enough. So looking at his next 2 questions, he wants to also know who his top salespeople are this year and what % of the total business did they contribute to the team total. So I am going to not have to leave it as a list, but I might have to organize those deals by who owned them. And so you'll see this in this screenshot here, an example of how they're organized now they're grouped by who owns those deals. And so that will let me calculate how much each person closed and what % that person closed of the team total. So by grouping them, I can do these additional calculations to answer questions 3 and 4. Now, if you're used to creating reports in Classic, you might recognize this format as something we called a summary report. But in essence, all it means is that the records are grouped. The rows of records are grouped by a field, like the owners. All right, so this format, this summary format, will actually answer 2 more questions, and you'll see that it does still answer the original 2 questions about how much we closed all year, because the total amount is still there in this report. But we have a 5th question that we have to answer for Mark, which is how much did each person close each quarter this year? So not only do we have to break it down by who owns those deals, but amongst those deals for each owner, we want to break it down by fiscal quarter. So I'm thinking we need to have the report grouped by columns as well for each quarter of the year. The screenshot's a little small, but you'll see that you still have the deal totals for the entire year at the top. And we have a breakdown, so we can do calculations for each quarter in addition to calculations per deal owner. And so if you're used to creating reports in Classic, you might recognize this format as a matrix report. So formatting the report this way with the rows grouped by the owners and the columns grouped by when it was closed, or the fiscal quarter, will allow me to answer the fifth question that Mark had. So it looks like this is the format I'm going to have to use for my report if I want to answer all 5 of Mark's questions. So we've settled on this particular format. Let's move on to step 3 now. Now we know we have a matrix report that we want to calculate numbers on. Step 3 will be to calculate those actual numbers, and let's look at what the calculations need to be. So his first question was, what are all the deals we closed this year? Not a lot of calculations. Maybe we might want to just count how many deals that were closed this year. He wants to know how much we closed as well. So we need to add the amounts for all the deals. So that's a simple summation of the amount. And then his third and fifth questions, who were my top salespeople this year and how much did each person close each quarter, are also summations of the amounts, but just within each group, within each owner's group. And so it's just not a summation on the total, but summations per group by owner and by quarter. Now, the fourth question is more complicated, though, because we actually have to do a little bit more advanced calculation. We actually have to do division here to calculate the percentage that each person contributed to the team total. So we have to take what each person closed, their total amount, but divided by the total amount for all the deals for their team. And that formula you see on the right here is a little complicated, but let's dive into what that means in the next slide here. So we had already decided that the matrix format, where you group the rows and you group the columns, is the right format for us to calculate all the breakdowns that we need. So at the top of the report, we will have the count of all the deals and what the deals are worth. But for the breakdowns, you'll see at the bottom there, actually, let's see, Cindy Central in this example has closed in the first quarter, $41,000. And if you go all the way to the right, you'll see that for the entire year, Cindy closed $234,000 worth of business. And that total for Cindy is what we call the grand summary for that row, for Cindy's row of deals. And so we call that the row grand summary. And then you'll see that for the first quarter, Cindy closed $41,000. The next person, oh, that's me, Liz Gates. I closed $121,000, and so on and so forth. And then there's a total. That bottom row shows the total per quarter. And so that bottom total is considered the grand summary for that column. So we call that a column grand summary. And you'll notice that on the far right, where we have the row grand summaries, even that column has a column grand summary. And that number is actually the team total. And so remember, we wanted to calculate what the percentage that each person contributed to the team total. So we divide that person's grand summary, divide that by the team total, which is the column grand summary for that column. And that will give us the percentage of the team total for each person. So a little bit of a complicated formula here, but that's the math. It's just a simple division to give us a percentage. And then at the bottom there, I've shown you what that formula looks like and how it should be defined in the Lightning Report Builder. We're going to be using a function called the parent group val function to reference that team total to do our division. Okay, so you can take your time and kind of digest this. We can come back to that later, but that's the formula we're going to use. And so now we know what calculations we're going to do. We can go to step 4. And once you have the calculations done, the fun part is you get to choose what charts you're going to visualize those groupings and the calculations that you've done. So for the 5 questions that Mark had for me, I could choose to maybe use a table to show all the lists that were all the deals that were closed this year. Use a gauge chart to show how much we closed. A bar chart to show this all the top salespeople. A donut chart would be a good way to show how the percentages stack up by person. and then maybe a stacked bar chart to show the breakdown by quarter for each person. And that brings us to our best practice, which Mark has talked about before in other sessions, about using one report for multiple charts in a dashboard. So remember, we walked through this 4-step plan to create a report that answered 5 questions. Why can't we use 5 different charts for that one report to answer those 5 questions? So we're going to show that example in the live demo. Logging into Lightning right now to build that report. I've already mapped out how I'm going to build the report. Let's go now do it in Lightning. When I log in, there's in my Reports tab, in Summer 18, there's actually 2 buttons now. And this first button is how I launched the Lightning Report Builder. And when I first log in and create a new report, I still get this window to choose what report type I'm going to use. Just like in the Classic Builder, it's just a Lightning version of that classic report type selector. And remember, I'm going to use an Opportunities report type. And the report builder loads. And some areas might be familiar, like you get a preview section right here in the main area. The new section you might not be familiar with is this outline area, which actually is a summary of all the display columns that we have available to us. And there's actually also a field pane that I could choose to expand to add display columns to my report. And there's also a filters panel here that I can switch to when I want to restrict the rows that are returned in my report. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually reset the display columns. Remember, there were only 4 columns I wanted in this report. So I'm actually just going to remove all the default columns that were shown in the report. And I'm going to add those display columns manually. I remember Mark wants to know who owns those deals. I'm going to type in the owner here in the Add Column section. That's one way you can add a column, is just by typing in the name and selecting it. Or I could use the field pane and drag some over. So maybe if I want the name of the opportunity, then I can find it and either drag it here to the outline panel to add it to the report, or I can add another one. I think we wanted to add the amount field, and we can drag it just to the report itself, to the preview area. And I think the last one we wanted was the close date. And we can add that as well. And once I'm done, I can also reorder the fields in my report. Maybe I want, let's say, the opportunity first, and just drag those columns up and down, and then the preview will update. And then the last thing I wanted to remember is to also filter my report, not by all opportunities, but maybe just the ones that belong to a team. And remember, I only want the ones that were closed this year, where the status is closed 1. And remember this format where it's just a list and with the totals. And remember, I can always click on the amount field to make sure that I'm adding them. This format will answer the first 2 questions that Mark had, and I could run the report without saving right now if I wanted to, and get the totals right there for Mark. But remember, I'm not done. This format wasn't going to get us all the answers to his questions. So we're going to go back to the report. And remember, we wanted to group it by the owner. So I'm just going to drag the opportunity owner to the section that says Group Rows. And so now you'll see that it's automatically formatted such that all the deals are grouped by who owns them. And then it automatically added up the totals for each of the owners as well. So now the format for the report has been updated to group by who owns them as well as when it was closed. But I don't want it grouped by the day it was closed. I'm going to choose to group it by the fiscal quarter. And you'll see you get the aggregates already available for Cindy, fiscal year, the first quarter, and what her total is for the year, as well as the total for the team for the first quarter, so on and so forth. Now, we have those calculations already for the breakdowns by the amount, but remember, we also wanted to calculate the percentage of the team total. So now that we have the right format for doing the calculations, let's do that calculation where we add a summary formula column. And I'm going to expand to a full editor. And we have this cool side window to help us form our formula. Remember, we wanted to take, let's choose a format first. So it's going to be a percentage, and we're going to be calculating it on the owner grouping. And we're going to say it's called the percent of team total. And we were going to take the amount, the sum of the amount for each owner, and we're going to divide it by, and there's this function called parent group cell, where we take the total amount for that team, and that is also the sum of the amount for the team. And remember, it was the row grand summaries, column grand summary. Now, you don't have to memorize this. We have resources to help you figure out what the right formula is, but I've already laid out that this is the formula I'm going to use. You're just got to make sure that it's the correct syntax. And then I apply my formula. And now it will calculate the percentage of the team total. And when I save and run it, we'll see, I'll call this deals won this year. And we'll save it to a subfolder. Let's say the sales executive reports folder. And it runs it. And actually, it would be easier if we just see the aggregates and not all the details. And we'll see that the team totals were calculated for each owner. So we know Cindy Central contributed 19% to the team total, and I contributed 39.5% to the team total. We can also add a chart here. But the cool thing is, remember, this report actually answers all 5 of Mark's questions. And it would be nice to have 5 charts, each showing an answer to Mark's questions. So we're going to actually add this report to a dashboard multiple times in the form of different charts. So we're going to click here, now that we have a saved report, and we're going to click Add to Dashboard. And so maybe I'll add it to a new dashboard that I'm going to call Sales This Year. And just keep pulling in that same Deals Won This Year report. Maybe the first one is a table, because he wanted a list of all those deals that were won this year. Those 2 columns might be fine. And I might want to sort it by the biggest deals first. And I'm going to call it maybe top 10 deals this year. And we're only just like a max of 10. And then we're going to add another chart still from that same Deals Won This Year report. This time we wanted to give him how much we closed. I'll put that in a gauge. We might say that 500,000 is not too bad, 1 million is good, and 1.5 million is really good. And we're going to call this Closed Won This Year. That's our gauge chart. And then maybe I want third chart. And his third question was about the sales leaderboard, which we don't need to group it by quarter, but we do want to see who owned it, and maybe we want to see the whole number of how much they closed, ordered by the sum of amount descending, correct? And we're going to call this the sales leaderboard. And then the fourth question has to do with how much each person contributed to the total. Still using the same report, let's use a donut chart, and we want to see the percentage that they contributed to the total, and we're going to call this the percent of team total. And then for Mark's final question, he wanted to know the breakdown by quarter. So maybe I'll choose a stacked bar chart, and it does list by owner and also by quarter, or I can switch that around and say, maybe I want to see it by close date and stacked by a quarter. Actually, maybe I do like it the other way. Yeah, like this. And then we'll call this deals one by quarter and owner. Maybe I actually want it vertical. So like I've got all these choices for how I want to answer his questions and how it's visualized on a chart. And maybe this will be something he might be easy for him to read and quickly see the answers to his questions. So once we're done, we save it. And here's my dashboard that I can share with Mark that answers his 5 questions. All right, Mark.
Thanks, Liz.
Now we know how
that
much.
was fantastic. Yeah, now we know all of the things. So that was an incredible live demo. We don't have a ton of time, and I do want to get to a couple of questions here. We've gone through we went through the Lightning Report Builder, the dashboards. Okay, cool stuff coming soon. Pick like 2 things, Liz, that you're real excited about.
All right, coming soon, we've got a new run page actually. So look for that. That we're planned for beta status in winter 19. It'll be much more optimized for you to run your reports. People have been asking to change the currencies and drill down further into their reports. So that's also coming in winter. And then quick search. Quickly find the right reports and dashboards on your list views. That's coming too.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. All right, a bunch of resources for you. Lots of Trailhead badges, Trailhead, the fun way to learn Salesforce. Also some great help and training links. And build and share your dashboard. So that one report to rule them all, like one ring to rule them all, can be really, really handy. So creating one report to feed multiple dashboard components is fantastic. All right, we have like a minute or so for questions. So I'm going to do my best to go through the questions that are in the community. Very quick question. If I built a report in Classic, can I use it in the new Lightning Report Builder? Yes, you can.
Yes.
Next question. Great. Awesome. If I want to do I need to enable report folder sharing for report folders in Lightning?
The enhanced folder sharing does need to be enabled, yes, for Lightning Report Builder.
Great. Let's see if I can get in one more. Can I download the results as an Excel spreadsheet for printing?
Yes. Once you save your report, there's a formatted export available for that report.
Okay. I know I picked the softball question. That's all we have time for today. We will be back in the community to answer your questions. And let us know, what did you think of today's webinar? Please, please, please complete that GoToWebinar survey. Let us know, was it awesome? Was it not awesome? And you can get the slides at that bit.ly link, and the recording will be up super, super shortly. Thank you everyone so much for attending. This has been one of our most popular webinars. And if you want, you can come see us do exactly the same thing again in about a week and a day. So thank you everyone, and thanks so much to Liz. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.